Hello, horror fans. Pete here from the Lasser Cast, where we review movies and TV shows that are all about horror. And today I get a chance to talk to one of my favorite horror writers and a friend of mine, Mr. Joshua MacMillan. Josh, welcome back to the Lasser Cast.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
Josh has been on the show a couple of times now at this point. He was on when we reviewed Moloch, which is on Shudder, and then he came back when we had a little panel and we discussed Halloween Ends, and we also discussed Hellraiser, the reboot. And so, Josh, right off the bat, I know that you have a big love for Michael Myers and the Halloween franchise. Was that movie,
Yeah.
was the 1978 Halloween your introduction to horror?
No, I mean, it was there with my initial introduction, um, but my initial introduction really came from my mom. My mom
Okay.
loved having it on the TV in the background while she was cleaning the house or whatever. Um, she didn't really shy away from letting us watch what pretty much whatever we wanted. If it had like way too much nudity or anything like that, she had an issue with that.
Yeah.
But horror movies she didn't really care about. My mom, I will say my mom's not a big slasher fan, but she
Hmm.
did enjoy Halloween. My mom liked more of like Your Rosemary's Baby or The Exorcist. These more cerebral, slow burn, atmospheric horror movies.
Yeah.
That's what my mom liked. Um, my my parents, when I must have been 10, 9, 10, 11. My parents separated and they ultimately got a divorce. And my dad would take us on the weekends and he would pretty much let us rent whatever we wanted to
Okay.
keep us entertained over the weekends. And
Yeah.
that's where my love really started to happen. Because my
Oh, okay.
mom, like she would watch horror, it'd be on the TV. We'd have it on the TV, but then, just browsing the shelves of a Hollywood video or a blockbuster and seeing the artwork, that's what really caught our attention. And
Yeah.
then realizing, oh wow, there's a lot more to these movies than what you see on TV. Ratings boards cutting things out and all of that. Our minds were blown. I have a twin brother, and him and I would just go back and forth. We still to this day we go back and forth trying to one up each other on horror movies, and I've yet to beat him. He introduced me to a Serbian film, and I haven't been able to find anything that tops that as far
Right. Right.
as you know disturbing. I mean, we
Right.
did recently go and see Terrifier 2, but I think Terrifier 2 is like fun, disgusting gore. A
Right.
Serbian film is just it's grueling. It's painful to watch that movie. At least as a father for me,
Yeah.
that movie was painful to watch. Um, but anyways, I'm going off on a tangent.
It's all good. That's what people do on this show, especially my
Um,
co-host Danny. But it's funny you bring up a Serbian film,
yeah.
and I've never seen it. I've never even heard about it until we started talking about it in our writers group. And I think I
Oh,
should point out to the people watching that you and I are in a writers group together. I've interviewed Megan Stockton at this point, and her video's been on the
yep.
channel. Megan's been on the channel before too, and then we have a couple of other people. But I've had a chance to read a bit of your fiction, and as you can see around us, I have some of your works right on our little screen here. Today, I want our viewers to know that we're going to be talking about your
Yeah, I
book,
see
The
that.
Best of Intentions, and we're going to be talking about your upcoming release, The Death House. So I wanted to keep going with that Michael thread because, I mean, you're even rocking a Halloween shirt right now. And I was going to say, is there something about Halloween in particular that, like, do you really like the character of Michael Myers? Is there something about slashers in general? Like, what draws you to that?
Halloween is, for me, it's a movie that I can put on when no matter how I feel. Um, it's a movie that I always come back to. Halloween is one that it's kind of hard to put into words exactly how I feel about the movie. Um, I relate with the character of Laurie Strode, which is feels weird to say that, but I do.
Sure.
Um, but on the other side, I relate to the Shape, to Michael
Mm.
Myers. When I was in school, I always felt like I was just on the peripheral of everything else. Um, and in that way, I relate to the Shape. I don't want to, kill my sister and stab babysitters. Um, but how he's always kind of on the peripheral of everything that's going on throughout that movie. Um, I know that sounds kind of pretentious, and I don't mean it to, but that movie, it's to me, it's the perfect Halloween movie for Halloween, as in the holiday. It's the perfect
Hmm.
fall movie. Um,
Right.
it's a comfort watch, and it's such a simple, tight story,
Hmm.
you know.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, as a storyteller, as somebody who wants to make a career out of writing and telling stories, um, that's what I hope that I can achieve with everything that I write. I just want to tell really engaging, simple stories that people can, you know, just pick up whenever they want and have fun with it. Um, yeah.
I am really, really
Plus, I
glad that
mean,
you,
the mask looks cool, so
the mask is
I
cool.
like the mask.
Yeah. I am really glad that you brought up that idea of like simple, tight stories that anyone can engage
Mhm.
because I always write questions when I'm going to interview people. And a couple of my points I was going to make is that reading The Best of Intentions, reading The Death House, reading your fiction that's encrypted, Carnage, your stories are very tight. I don't find there to be like a lot of like sort of poetic description or like there's not meandering. It's always very like
Yeah,
to the point, and I feel like it's almost like workman's fiction where you kind of go into the details of like what your character is doing throughout the day. And I personally think that what
yeah,
you do with that is that it makes it more jarring when the violence occurs because you're kind of lulled to the sense of
oh,
everyday
thank you.
life, and then there's this like intense violence that you describe, and it's very quick and to the point. Is that part of your intention?
Yeah, my intention is to okay, let's look at Stephen King. All right.
Yeah, yeah,
He is a huge influence to every modern author. Doesn't matter
absolutely.
what genre you are in some way influenced by Stephen King.
Hmm.
Um, I would love to write, these long, flowery, descriptions of a blade of grass. But my philosophy is I if I can get it done, get the get get the desired effect in less words,
Hmm.
the better.
Hmm.
For the simple reasoning of, if you talk to anybody um who's into modern horror,
Hmm.
um especially podcasters like yourself, I listen
Hmm.
to a lot of podcasts about movies, and the biggest complaint that I've heard is runtime,
Hmm.
film
Yep.
runtime.
Yeah.
You know, me, I'm okay with a 3 hour long slasher movie. All right, Terrifier 2 was wonderful for me. I could have gone another half an hour with that.
Hmm.
Um, but I know some people find that, you know, way too tedious. It's exhausting. Um, so I kind of write by this philosophy of that old screenwriting rule where one page is 1 minute of film time,
Mm-hmm.
one page of the script.
Yes.
So why not 1,000 words be, a minute, or 500 words be a minute of
Mm.
film, you know,
Yeah.
have these
Yeah.
shorter, tighter stories, and you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that can read 50,000 words in just one sitting,
Right.
but you can read it in one day. Easily.
Yeah.
If the book is engaging enough, you can read it in one sitting.
Right.
But like the Death House, for example, that's 44,000 words, and I feel like that the length of it equates to like a good 90-minute grindhouse movie. I just want to take you by the hand
Right.
and let's go to the drive-in and watch a movie together.
Mm-hmm.
That the movie that we're gonna watch is what I write on the page.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, having this punchier, you know, more, I don't want to say gritty, but like yeah, I'll say gritty. Punchier, grittier type of writing
Yeah.
as opposed to the flowery, poetic, um, almost like you're writing in verse that some authors utilize.
Right.
Um, I feel like my words will resonate with more people,
Yes.
and more people will understand and
Mm-hmm.
actually want to read it because they're not going to have to sit there with us with a dictionary or a thesaurus to understand what it is that I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, really great point. And that is a really, I've done a lot of these interviews at this point, and I have never heard anyone make that comparison. I don't know the idea of screenplays where it's like 1 minute of a film equals 1 minute, 1 page of a script, but that's interesting to compare that to a book.
Keep the story simple and make the characters matter. That's I think the most important thing. And
Yeah.
do I want to write a doorstop like it? Yeah. I would love to write a doorstop like it. I just don't think I have the patience for it,
Hmm.
honestly. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe in 20 years, you know, but I feel like I have way too much to say within the genre to worry to spend that much time on one project.
So, speaking of novels, you have The Death House, which you were telling me before, a digital copy should be available on Halloween of all days, right? And so, whenever I have people on my show, I
Yeah.
always want them to kind of pitch their story without spoiling it so that readers can kind of get a fresh look. But, like, how would you pitch it to potential readers?
Oh man, I'm bad at this. All right. The Death House is a grindhouse book. It is not, I wouldn't necessarily call it splatterpunk because there's no political agenda behind it. It has its extreme moments, so I would lean more towards the extreme horror side if I had to name one of those two genres. But I feel like grindhouse hits it better. I mean, at the end of the day, it's reminiscent of Hostel, um, but instead of being taking place in a foreign country, it takes place in a small town. Actually, I don't think I even named the town or really get into where the town is because it's very it you follow it's tropey in the way that you follow a group of five friends, two couples, and the fifth wheel who get invited to this extreme haunt.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure you're familiar with extreme haunts like McCamey Manor. I've been fascinated with those,
Hmm.
and I've just never. I know I'll never have the balls to go through one of those, but I like the idea. I like the concept of people
Right.
who are brave enough to sign that waiver and get waterboarded for 12 hours. I couldn't do it. That's not for me. But the idea and the video footage that I'd seen stuck with me. And I thought, okay, well, what if somebody used the label of an extreme haunt to enact some sort of sick and twisted design.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where our friends that we follow, Nick, Jerry, um, Doug, Megan, and Christina. That's the names of our group of. They're not kids. I mean, they're like college age, but they're out of college. They're working class people who just get together, you know. Um, and Nick and Jerry are brothers. They live together. Um, and they've actually been searching for this place called the Death House. And
Yeah.
it's a fabled extreme haunt that supposedly nobody's ever survived. Not,
Mm-hmm.
when they say survived, they mean, oh, nobody's ever made it all the way through. But really, nobody's ever survived the Death House. And they catch wind that the Death House will be operating in their area, and they manage to
Mm-hmm.
get an invite. And they talk their girlfriends and their friend Doug into checking it out, and
Yeah.
they may have bit off more than they could chew. So, without spoiling it too much, I mean that's basically that's the setup. Um,
Yeah.
it is it is violent when it needs to be violent, but um it's not just violence for the sake of violence. There are some over the top violent moments, but I wanted you to feel those moments. So you don't get into that until I think it's nearly 7 chapters into the book. And I tend to write a little bit longer chapters. So about halfway into the book is when it starts to really take off. And then
Mm-hmm.
it just kind of goes like a rocket.
Yeah, I agree. And well, I was gonna say, I kind of ask this question a lot of horror authors because it really intrigues me, this subject matter. You kind of said before that you are a bit of a pantser, that you're essentially writing your first outline because you're doing a collaboration now. Um, as a pantser and as a horror writer, obviously there are sort of gruesome kills in this book, right? There's disturbing things that happen in this book.
Oh,
I always think of disturbing deaths as sort of like set pieces in a movie, like an action movie. This is the scene that's on the boat, and this is the scene, that is at the top of the trade center, right? Oh, that's a bad reference. But anyway, what I was gonna say was, do you have those sort of kills, those kind of horrific moments in your head first, and you work them into your story, or is it like they just kind of naturally happen as you are getting deeper and deeper into the narrative?
I could see both happen with the Death House.
Okay.
I knew there's one character, and it's this scene is one that I think if this book is going to be known for anything, it's going to be
Hmm.
known for this scene, and it's going to be known for it's got a little bit of a rock and roll ending that I really really like, and
Hmm.
everybody that's read it that I've reached out to and chatted back and forth with,
Yeah.
at least outside of the writing group that we're in, um, like Christina Pfeiffer from the Mothers of Mayhem, Samantha Hawkins, she's a TikTok book talker,
Yeah.
and a couple other reviewers. They all really dug how I ended it because it kind of just ends, but it's
Hmm.
kind of like a big like fuck you kind of ending, right?
Right.
And you'll understand the watchers listeners will understand when if they read the book what I mean by that.
Hmm.
And it's a kick-ass ending. So, but this scene in particular, there's an emotional weight to it, and there is a level of a level of brutality between these two characters that I wasn't expecting, but I
Yeah.
knew going in to write it that I wanted it to be this scene that the book is remembered for. There's no secret that these characters are going to come across some people that want to hurt them.
Yeah.
With a title like The Death House and with the way that I've set it up, and you read the back of the book, it's obviously these kids have bit off more than they could chew. Um, the first couple that wake up in the death house, they
Mm-hmm.
have an interaction with some people, and
Mm-hmm.
everything kind of just fires off,
Mm-hmm.
and they're in blah, they're in an immediate fight for their life, and
Yes.
they manage to persevere, and they manage to come out come out on top, and they know they've got to find their friends and try to get the hell off this property. And the scene that they walk into is probably the most violent and brutal thing I've ever written.
Right.
Um, and in terms of description, so the gore hounds I think will like it, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of people who fully immerse themselves in splatterpunk and extreme horror, it's gonna be old hat to them.
Okay.
But I think that the scene, I think it'll rank right up there with some of the you know best books of those subgenres. But I'm
Yeah.
biased because I wrote the damn thing. Um, a lot of people that I've shown the book,
Mhm.
that have read the book, that have read that scene. Um, my concern was that it would come across a little too try hard,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
everybody said that it reads wonderfully. It's a disgusting scene. It's a painful scene to read, and
Yeah.
it's very violating. Um,
Mhm.
it's probably the most uncomfortable scene. Maybe not the most brutal, but the most uncomfortable scene that I've ever had to write. Um,
And so when
so
you write
yeah.
something like that and you've got it on the page, like how do you feel afterwards? Like I know Gabino Iglesias, I've never interviewed him, but like I know that like when he wrote The Devil Takes You Home, he said that he had like a hard time sort of like just processing writing this horrible stuff that even though it happened to children and things like that, that he kind of needed time by himself and he had to like just kind of watch happy things. Do you ever find yourself having to kind of recover after writing some really disturbing things?
Yeah. After that scene in particular, I did.
Yeah.
After finishing the first draft of the Best of Intentions, I had to take a little bit of a breather. Um, but I have a strong stomach and I can
Mm-hmm.
handle a
Mm-hmm.
lot when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to heavy subjects. It's almost impossible to offend me. If anybody's going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I haven't
Yeah.
completely offended myself yet. But while I haven't read nearly enough of the man's work as I feel I should have, but the author Joe Lansdale, I think
Yeah. Oh
you've
yeah.
interviewed him.
Yes. Yes.
He
Yeah.
uh he he has a saying that I really love, and
Yeah.
it's right like everybody is dead.
Right. Right.
Um, I can't, okay. Um, there for a little while, I had my biggest struggles with writing, horror and disturbing scenes or anything like that.
Right.
My biggest struggle ultimately came from because I was afraid not necessarily that my family was going to read it,
Yeah.
But I identify as a man of faith.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and I don't want anybody to, come at me or try to come at my family because, oh, he claims to be a Christian, but he's writing this or he's writing that,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, these are just books,
Yeah.
Um, so it took me a little bit to kind of resolve that within myself. And I actually had the opportunity to message back and forth with Ronald Kelly a
Mm-hmm.
couple of
Mm-hmm.
times, and he sent me this wonderful article that he had written that basically detailed his walk with faith
Mm-hmm.
and how he had to go and basically do the same thing. He had to resolve within his own heart and his own mind, look, you're not doing anything wrong,
Right.
you know. So um I'd say that would be the only reason that I actually felt the need to kind of step back
Mm-hmm.
because I went too far. I think I could have gone much further. I know I could have gone much further, but
Mm-hmm.
I chose to stop when I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I don't want my writing to come across like I'm trying too hard or like I just want to relish in the gore. I want to tell you a good story, and at some point, there's you know I can tell you about 4 or 5 stab wounds in a body. But if I keep telling you, okay, 7 or 8 stab wounds, and then the throat was cut, and then,
Right.
the torso was gutted from, groin to sternum,
Right. Right.
at some point you're like, I get it. Okay, move on. You know,
Right.
I don't want to sit there and relish in it, but I'm not going to shy away from it. And
Okay.
it took me a while. It took me a couple of years to become comfortable actually writing the things that I feel like I'm supposed to be writing. And that is, the Death House is it's part of the reason I was never fully satisfied with the Death House in its original version. It was a short story that was published in an anthology,
Oh, okay.
and I just wasn't happy. And it was actually a creature feature too. The Death House it was still similar.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the characters remained, um,
Right.
but it was like a shape shifting like creature that was behind
Mm.
everything that was going on, and I
Oh,
did away
okay.
with that because I wanted to touch on the nasty business that human beings can do.
Yeah.
Um, so hopefully I succeeded, and hopefully that wasn't just a long-winded tangent that didn't answer your question.
No, no, it does, and I mean, it brings up a whole bunch of other things too, right? It's funny that we talked about the Death House, and then of course you have the Best of Intentions, which was like your first book, and I feel like they're two very, very different
Yeah,
stories. There is graphic
yeah,
violence described in the Best of Intentions, but I feel like it is a different kind of story altogether, and that actually really bothered me once I finished that story. And I know that like you were recently on another YouTube show. It was Reader's Labyrinth, right? And the guy on there
yeah.
mentioned
Right.
your military service, and I'm assuming that that was the inspiration for the Best of Intentions. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're wrong. I mean,
I'm
well, to a certain degree, you're right, but you're
okay.
mostly wrong.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I did pull from my real life for that story.
Hmm.
I was an assistant site supervisor for a security company for a are you familiar with the like hardware store Menards?
I've heard that name, but we don't have any here in Texas, and there weren't any in New York. I don't think. Or at least where I live in Texas.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're okay. So basically, I was the an assistant site supervisor for a like a lumber distribution center. Okay.
Hmm.
I sat in a guard shack and read books. That's and doing that job is actually what put me on the path to becoming a writer.
Oh, okay.
Or
Okay.
actually trying to take it seriously.
Sure.
Um, but but I pulled from that. There are some real stories. There's a character in The Best of Intentions that gets caught sleeping on the job. That was my
Right.
brother. My
Oh,
brother
okay.
got,
Okay.
you know, everybody, yeah, everybody pulls from their real life.
Yeah.
Um, they just write a fictional account of it. Um, but a lot of the war stuff that's in there, the combat stuff,
Yeah.
that is stories that have been told to me from friends of mine that I was in the service with, um, family members that were
Sure.
military, things like that. I didn't pull any actual personal military experiences for the
Hmm.
book, with the
Hmm.
exception of there is a passage or two where I talk about where I wrote about soldiers showing up to formation drunk and
Right.
having to try to stand still. That was
Yeah.
from my personal experience. But the other stuff, the real dark stuff, that came from other people who have told me about their experiences and things like that. So you're right, but you're wrong at the same time.
And I think that we should kind of explain the best of intentions to our readers too, without kind of spoiling it. And I think I can maybe take a shot at it if you don't mind.
By
Like,
all means.
yeah, so the main character, Corey, he is this head of the security group that you mentioned before, and he's checking up on this property. He is a veteran who has seen combat and he has PTSD. He has a son that he loves and a wife that he loves. And he starts to get these ominous messages that are hinting at something that's going to happen in the future. It's making him more and more paranoid. And, we'll see who the messages are coming from and what it ultimately leads to. Hopefully, I didn't spoil anything.
No, I don't think that spoils anything. When I pitched the book, I the when I pitch it, say at a convention,
Hmm.
if I put the book in somebody's hands and I'll tell them, so this is a book that deals with a man suffering with PTSD who has allowed himself to get too involved with alcohol.
Hmm.
And the book begs the question, how far would you go to protect the people that you love?
Hmm.
But then there's a B side to that question. What if you were wrong?
Hmm.
So that's how I pitch it. And it's that pitch has sold me a few copies. So um, I'd say it's a decent pitch for the book.
In the very beginning, you have an acknowledgement in the very beginning of the book, and
Yep.
you the very first person you thank is your mother-in-law. I was wondering what was the significance of that.
So my mother-in-law, Elizabeth, my very first published short story was a short story version of The Best of Intentions.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of like novelette novella length. It was like 14,000 words. Um, Basically, my mother-in-law, she's not a huge horror fan. She dabbles in like light horror, um, but she's mostly like a romance reader.
Mm.
And one of the publishing houses that puts out a lot of the books that she reads, every October they release a horror anthology, and she saw a call for submissions. My mother-in-law saw that they released a call for submissions, and she shared that with me,
Oh,
and
cool.
I pitched them just a concept idea for the best of intentions, and they accepted it, and then I had to make do and actually write it. Um, I had nothing more in my head than, the final image in the book, that very ending
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
That's what I saw first. That's
Okay.
the original, and I kind of reverse engineered it and kind of just kept asking, okay, what would bring this man to this position, and kind of just
Right.
work backwards. But yeah, she shared a call for submissions, and it made me actually have to write something to completion. The short story version of The Best of Intentions is the first thing that I've ever completed,
Mm.
and I felt it was fitting that it would be the first novel, because I always wanted it to be more of like a novella. When I was really writing it and finishing it for the publication that
Yeah.
it ended up with, um, I could feel that it should at least be a novella.
Sure.
But then when I was rewriting it for D&T, because I pitched D&T once I got the rights back. I pitched
Yeah.
D&T and I started rewriting it. The first 6,000 words of Best of Intentions turned into the first like 12 or 13,000 words, and I was like, oh wow, okay, this is probably going to be a novel, not just a
Right.
novella. And when it did become my first novel, and D&T and I had already signed the contracts for it, I knew immediately that I was going to dedicate that book to my mother-in-law,
Yeah.
because if it weren't for her, that story would not exist.
Do you have anything that's like on the horizon after the Death House that like you can kind of allude to, or no? You got to keep it under wraps.
Sneaky, sneaky, Pete. Sneaky, sneaky.
Sneaky Pete, isn't
Um,
that like a show? I think that was a show on Showtime with like
I
Giovanni
don't know.
Ribisi.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can talk a little bit about this.
Okay.
I know she won't mind.
Go ahead.
Um, Megan Stockton, who wrote Ethic and Quiet Pretty Things, and she has an upcoming release called Blue Jay. I believe it releases in March or April through D&T.
That's right.
Her and I are collaborating on a novel that we are hoping it's a novel told in two parts. The first part is finished. Well, it's unedited, but it's
Hmm.
finished.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm currently in the process of doing, a pseudo outline for the second part.
Oh wow.
We know what the story is. We know how we're going to finish it. It's just I just gotta either tonight or tomorrow finish writing up a linear kind of breakdown synopsis of what the second part's going to be, and then we're going to just kind of trade off every couple thousand words and write through until the end. And that one, we are looking at releasing that at AuthorCon at the end of March.
Oh dang.
So yeah,
Okay. Wow. That's soon.
yeah, it's going to be a quick turnaround, but with the two of us working on it together,
Yeah.
my editor Mary Danner, she's already signed on to edit the book. Um, so I'm hoping the book will be in Mary's hands by mid to late December.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and if that's the case, we'll turn it over into Mary's hands, and then let her chop it up and edit it while we start shopping for a cover. We don't have a title yet. It's currently untitled.
Hmm.
I think we're gonna title it once the book is finished, once the initial writing is done.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what's coming immediately next.
Okay.
I was invited the three after that. I have three other publications that'll be coming out, all three of which are through D&T. I'm not
Okay.
sure how much I can talk about each one, but I can give a little bit.
Sure.
The
Wow.
first one is a short story. I was invited. They do a Seven Deadly Sins series, and it's 7 books featuring 7 authors, and each author writes a short story based on one of the 7 deadly sins. The book
Sure.
that I was invited to write for was for wrath. So
Yeah.
I am working on trying to craft a 7 or 8 thousand word story for them. That one's a
Mm.
charity anthology because it. Oh,
Oh,
I didn't really get into what the collaboration is, but
yeah.
it's basically like a tribute to Halloween. Is what
Oh,
the collaboration with Megan Stock. So it's a tribute to Halloween. It's basically if you take what David Gordon Green did with this recent trilogy,
yeah.
how it's okay. They use the first movie as almost like a prologue to their trilogy. Um, it's basically like that, but it's told in 2 parts, and
Okay.
there's no 40-year time gap. And
Oh,
we do
okay.
things. We're telling this story the way that we felt that trilogy should have gone, but
Yeah.
we're using original characters. It's not Michael Myers. It's kind of hard to get into, but it's very Halloween. It is very
Okay.
it is a blatant homage to Halloween. So anybody that enjoys Halloween, I think, will take the book. Uh,
Oh,
then I've got the Wrath story. I
right.
signed a contract for my next novel through D&T. That'll come out.
Whoa.
I believe the release date is set for late October of 2023. So one
Whoa.
year from now,
Yeah.
that book will be out. That one's called Devil's Night. That
Oh,
one
yes.
is another slasher style story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you read a little bit of that one. I think you read the first like 10,000 words or so. What I sent to D&T um, to see if they'd be interested.
Yeah.
And I
I'm a big
also
fan of
sent
that one.
them another one. Yeah. No contracts have been signed about this one, so I don't know how much I can say about it. But D&T has expressed interest in another novella, potential novel called "Till Death Do We Part," which is it's um it's a bit of a revenge story. Um, yeah, and that's all I'm going to say about that one right now. It's a
You should
revenge story
change.
called "Till Death."
You should change your name, like for your author's name, like just like George R. Martin or like J.R.R. Tolkien. It should just be like Joshua D&T MacMillan. Considering like that's your like
No,
future.
I love D&T. Um, D&T took a chance
Yeah.
signing me. I was unheard of. I'd had a couple of short stories published. They brought me on with ABC's of Terror Volume 2, and I wrote a story for them called Wise for Yellowstone. And you know, they were at that time they were only doing these anthologies. And I
Hmm.
reached out to Dawn and I asked her, I was like, hey, by chance, do you guys have you guys ever considered, publishing novels or novellas? And she, months later, when I heard her tell this story on the podcast, I realized, wow, how crazy this is. But
Hmm.
literally the day before, her and her husband had been talking about that. And they said, well,
Mm,
or her husband had said, well, let's see what happens. And the next day, she gets a message from me asking
mm,
about it. And, so I sent them the original story for the best of intentions,
hmm.
and they felt it would be marketable, and they were willing to take a chance. And ever
Wow.
since then, God, I've lost count how many authors they've signed, how many standalone novels and novellas and collections that they've released. I mean,
Right.
they've got Ronald Kelly. They've got. I'm not going to go through a roster only because I know I'm going to forget somebody. But I mean, Ronald Kelly,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
he's
Big
a
name.
fairly big name,
One of
and
the
he
biggest.
he
Yeah.
jumped at the chance to work. You know,
That's freaking awesome.
so I love D&T. I would bend over backwards and walk through hell for Don.
Well, so I was gonna say that at the end of the video, when I have these authors on, I always have you guys just kind of plug where they can find, where readers can find your stuff, right? And so obviously you have a lot of things coming out.
Right.
Is there a website that people can go to find your things? And then also, where are you on social media?
So I don't have a website yet. That's one of the next things that I'm going to be working on.
Right.
Everything right now is available on Amazon. If you just search my name, it'll come up. CRYPTID CARNAGE is also available on Godless. The Best of Intentions is solely on Amazon because we wanted to try Kindle Unlimited with it, see how that did for the sales. The Death House will be exclusively on Amazon.
Mhm.
However, I will have paperbacks of both The Best of Intentions and The Death House, that if somebody wanted a signed copy, they could reach out to me directly and buy directly from me, and you get the signed book, you get bookmarks, swag, all thank you card, little things like that. What else? Yeah, every Amazon is probably the best place to find everything. Otherwise, as far as where I'm at on social media, I'm on Facebook. That's where I'm most active. I am on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be more active on Twitter.
Yeah.
I do have an Instagram. If you just search my name, you'll find me. I think my Instagram is at the Joshua MacMillan. Twitter is at Josh MacMillan88, and then Facebook is just my name. And I do have an author page attached to it. So
Nice. Cool, man. Well, I enjoyed talking to you, and I just like hearing about your behind the scenes stuff. I've had a lot of fun when you come on and talk about movies with me and Danny too. So before your release that's coming out, after the Death House, if you want to come back and talk about some movies with us again, we'd gladly have you on again.
oh, for sure. For
Sweet.
sure. I
All
love
right.
talking horror. Anytime I get to talk horror, oh, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool, man. So then, until then, we will see you next time. Thank you so much, man.